Hi, this is Lou, welcome to my channel. And today I'm going to be painting an abstract, really fun, joyful, patterned piece. I wanted to paint something that really sums up the theme that I've been going for the last few months, which is finding joy in painting. So I wanted to use all the colours, all the patterns, all the gold, everything. If you want to paint along with me, I'll list all the supplies I'm using today in the description box. I'm going to be painting on this square archer's block, which I've taped off. I've got my watercolours, I've got some gold paint, and I've got a white pen. But I suggest that you use what you've got and what you want to play with. Whatever colours, whatever supplies, whatever takes your fancy. And I'm not doing a sketch for today. I'm going to be doing an intuitive painting, similar to what I did a few weeks ago, where I just start making patterns and shapes and build on them. So I'm starting in one corner, just painting a nice quarter circle in red, although it's quite watered down, so it'll be nice and pink when I've finished. In general, I want to build up layers, so I'm starting with paler washes of colour, and I'll get brighter and brighter as I go along. I recently got this really bright pink colour, which is Opera Rose, and I've been itching to use it in a painting. So I'm going to add little touches of it in here. It's almost neon pink. And I want to make this painting quite fast, and I want it to be fluid and fun. So I'm leaving little gaps between my blocks of colour, between my different shapes. So I don't need to wait for them to dry, and I can just move on and paint the next one. I'm keeping all my shapes really simple, so they're either circles or straight lines, or I'm using some kind of petal shapes, like I'm doing here with this turquoise colour. I work from both sides of the shape and meet in the middle, so I can space out my petals nicely. And I want there to be a variety of different shades within this shape. So some areas I'm painting with a little bit more pigment and some areas with a bit more water. I'm not being too precious or too careful about the shapes that I'm making. Some will be a little rounder, some will be a little squarer, some will be shorter and some will be longer. And that all adds to the character of the painting. I want my shapes to have a little bit of life and character. I don't want them to be too fixed. So I'm not using any rulers or drawing around anything. I'm not sketching anything. I'm just going for it. Once I've finished building out one corner, what I want to do is to turn the page and start working from the next corner. And I'll do this 4 times around the page and start building in from each corner towards the centre. My first corner, I used all of these kind of circular or quarter circular shapes. So for the second one, I'm starting out with some nice straight lines. I want some variation of colour in my stripes. So some I'll paint with a swoosh of one colour and then grab another colour and paint another stripe right next to it so they blend together. For other areas, I'll paint them all one shade and then grab a different colour and dab it in while it's still wet. I want different sizes of stripes too, and for the small ones I switched to a smaller brush just to give me a little bit more control. And then once you've worked with straight lines for a little while, it's time to switch it up again and go back to curves. I'm making another little flower shape here with rings of petals in red. And then I want to go around that and kind of box it in. So I can use the point of my brush to get into the little points in between all of the petals with my next colour. Once I've got that nice clean edge, I can fill in the rest of the shape that I want. So I've painted this half circle in indigo, and I want to kind of blend it out in a rather dramatic way. So I take some almost clean water. It's just got a little bit of colour in it so I can see where I'm painting it. And I paint another stripe just beyond that indigo. I'm not touching it yet, but when it's finished, I'll take a clean brush and drag it down the centre between the two colours. And I'll get a really dramatic and interesting blend. Once I've explored that corner of the page, it's time to move on again, turn the page again, and start on another corner. And I'm going back to that quarter circle shape and building up another kind of petal-y, flowery shape. This time I'm starting with the blue, and then I'll move into the warmer colours. Again, I want some really interesting variations in my colours. So I can paint an area in one colour and then drop some other shades into it. For these petally, flowery shapes, I start painting in red and then clean my brush, move on to the yellow, and paint more of it in the yellow. And I know that I'm going to get lots of interesting orangey blends where the two meet. Turn my page again and start making stripes on the fourth corner. Again, I want them to be different sizes, different colours, and I'm trying to balance the colours across the page. So in the opposite corner I started with warm colours and then moved towards cool ones. Here I'm starting with those cool blues and working through pink and then red and orange. Once I've built in my design from each of the four corners towards the centre, I'm left with this little blank bit in the middle. I decide I'm just going to paint it all with one colour, and then I'll add a pattern onto it later. Again, I can use the point of my brush to get in close between the petals of those flower shapes, and leaving a nice 1 to 2 millimetre gap between all my shapes means that I can paint them right next to each other and they're not going to run together. Although if you do touch them in 1 or 2 places, it's not the end of the world. You'll get some interesting colour mixes and bleeds there. If you started in one corner and moved around the page, by the time you get to filling in the centre, the first corner is pretty much dry. So you can add some layers and some details and some other colours. For this layer, I'm using slightly stronger colours and the smaller brush, and I'm using smaller versions of the patterns that I've already made. I start by making a stripe of stripes, just by using my tiny little brush to make little stripes next to one another that bend around a curve. And then I add more circles, more stripes in brighter colours again. I want to use the petal shapes that I've used on the larger scale on these stripes as well. So I just place these elongated, rounded shapes next to one another. In a long stripe like this, I think they look very different to how they do in a circle. Almost like a railway bridge or something like that. I add a checkered pattern to the stripe above it. But I am careful to leave some space as well, because I know I want to come in with some gold and some white pen. And so I need to leave a little bit of space, some areas, to embellish with those. I really love this pattern of alternating triangles around a curve. I quite like that it's hard to make them even, starting at one side and working towards the other, and you end up with some rather distorted, strange shaped triangles. Again, I'm painting them with a mix of colours, some more pinky, some more purpley, and some more bluey. And I really like the effect of that over the kind of paler lilac I've got underneath. I'm going to keep going, adding more stripes, dots, petal shapes and embellishment to all of these areas. For this turquoise bluey area in the centre, I want a pattern that will kind of cover the whole surface. I could use dots or stripes again, but instead I decided to use these little petal shapes painted in zigzaggy stripes across the page. When I'm finished, the pattern will look like a series of interconnected circles. But I'm not really being too careful about how big my shapes are or whether my lines are straight. Again, a little bit of wonkiness will add to the character. I'm painting this pattern in the same turquoise blue that I used for the underneath layer, and it's quite pale, so it'll be fairly subtle when it's dry. Now again, the things that I painted on the first corner are all dry, so I can go in with my next layer of embellishment and detail. And for this I'm using the gold paint. Add a fair bit of water to it to get it to a nice creamy consistency. And I'm using it with a very small brush, just in tiny little areas. I can use it to outline things, to add dots, or to add extra stripes. I can use it quite randomly, like on these petals, to get a kind of speckled effect. Some of my gold blobs are a little bit bigger and a little bit smaller than the ones next to them. But I can also use it quite regularly as well, like I've done on this Scarlet pattern, just to add a little bit of embellishment to each of the little half circle shapes. The final thing is to go in with the white pen. For this I'm using a Posca acrylic marker. What I found with this pen in particular is that when I start out, no matter how much I've shaken and primed the pen, the lines are a little bit transparent. But if I just keep going, within a minute or so, the colour gets more opaque and stands out against the watercolour a bit better. So these first white lines and marks I've made with the pen, I might go over again when I'm finished, if I want them to be a bit sharper and stronger. And I can use the white pen on the areas that I've left that I haven't put any embellishment on, to again add more stripes and more dots and any details that I feel I want to add. So this is going to be my final video of 2023. And I want to thank you for painting along with me this year, for all of the support you've given me, all of the lovely comments. I'm so grateful. I really hope you enjoy painting this one. I wish you lots of joy and peace over Christmas and the New Year, and I look forward to seeing you again in 2024. So thanks very much for watching. Take care, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.